One doesn't understand the digital divide until they step into a government office and the printer is chugging along and the employees hope it holds for another year. The desktop computers on the brink of dying in an office layout which looks like it hasn't been updated since the early 70s. We can see this in our post offices, our public schools, our DMVs. And then we wonder, why are things so slow? Why is it so difficult for information to be distributed? Why is it so hard for change to occur?
Our infrastructures nowadays are built by software companies and they have no liability. They don't need to answer to the people. They don't need to have a governance structure that has a built-in hearing process. They can simply build something that is, to the mission of the company or answers, to the will of the board. Folks need to see that they are, in fact, relinquishing their rights when they elect to be served by companies versus government.
Only government can actually generate the resources, and I don't just mean the financial resources, but I mean for example, eminent domain that's required to just put down the infrastructure to drive the internet, for example, right? There's no way that private enterprise can do that all on its own, no matter how much people like Elon Musk like to pretend otherwise. Like, they heavily rely on a centralized government infrastructure for major technological advances. And that's why in countries where the government has really put attention and resources toward building a technology infrastructure and technology economy, which is not the United States, frankly, you see a lot more innovation. Government is challenged by technology in terms of execution. Government is often starved by its very own legislators and not allocated the resources to stay up to date. Public facing agencies and the kinds of computers that they have, the kind of software that they're using with the military and what they're using. Military is also government. So it's not the case that all government is hampered by antiquated technologies or even antiquated bureaucracies, but that parts of government are innovating and other parts of government are lagging, and it's not equally distributed. And that's the whole story of accessibility.
I think local government is really behind still in terms of technology. And I think for a lot of people, that is also a way that enables them from accessing what's going on in government. For instance, if you look at the city website, it feels very out of date and very hard to navigate. I think that the city operates largely by mail still. There's still a lot of like snail mail. One thing that definitely needs to take place is like an update of technology in the way that the city uses it, and so that people can access things. That kind of technology where you text a number and you get information right away is kind of how the world is operating right now. And the city, for the most part, does not operate in the matter. You should be able to text a number and see when the next city council meeting is taking place, what time and where, give you a few parking options, because it's also extremely difficult to park around City Hall. That's another thing that I think was really prohibiting.
I feel like we're like the most behind in terms of technology. We're never given enough dollars to have the software. We don't even have like Adobe Acrobat. We only have Reader. It's just like, it's interesting. It's bizarre, but government hardly has its own resources to help itself. But I feel like we need to kind of help ourselves figure out how we're blind and how some things are really working against ourselves. Rural communities that don't have internet access throughout the state, and that's an equity issue as well. Sometimes internet should be like treated like a public utility. It's like life for people. It's like water. It's people's access to school. It's people's access to each other. It's people's access to the world.
One of the things that this pandemic has made clear is like, we've known about the digital divide. We've known about spots in South LA that have, one provider that are sure they have internet access, but like, it's not competitive, it's not available. But what's so crucial is in 2020, with a global pandemic where everything was on Zoom, where every kid was asked to, they log onto Zoom before kindergarten, it became clear that the internet, which is in the government scheme of things new, is a utility. It is an essential utility. It is something that we all need. It will take a long time for it to happen, but I am more optimistic than I think I will ever been that that sort of entrenched monopoly could actually be challenged because there was a crisis which required it. The joke I always like to say is government is like a battleship. It takes a lot of effort to turn, but once it turns, you really don't want to be standing in the way. You know, how many students in LAUSD did not have laptops? And there was instantaneously, after years of talking about failed programs, upwards of a decade, I'm sure, cutting, you know, laptops out every week. We're figuring out how to drop hotspots. You know, the battleship has been turned. And now hopefully, you know, these problems are in the way.